Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Juan McLaurin, and I am with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. I'm a Black male. I'm wearing a sort of black and white checkered shirt. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm here to talk with you this evening about our climate action plan that we're creating for the Hampton Roads MSA or planning area. And we'll get a little bit deeper into that in a second here. Some housekeeping things to keep in mind is that there will be a question answer available at the end. You can use the cool Q&A feature that is built into Zoom to use. And then if you're on a telephone, we'll also mention this again at the end. But if you're on a telephone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. And you can also hit *6 to unmute. Again, my name is Quan McLaurin. I'm excited to have you all here tonight. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and get us started. So today's webinar, we're just going to go over a couple key points related to the climate action plan, give you a little bit of background, and then let you take part in a survey that'll be available on our website starting tonight and then going into February. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to provide us with feedback and have your concerns, your interests, and your perspective included and represented in this regional climate action plan. So we'll be going over who we are, greenhouse gases, some goals related to the climate plan, looking at our timeline and where we are right now in that process. What I believe is, the most important part, how you can get involved, and then we'll have an opportunity for question and answer. So looking at our region again, we're the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. I know it's a very long name. Sometimes, people will just refer to us by PDC, as you can see here. So I'm trying to point. We have 17 different localities that are a part of our region, going all the way from the James City, Gloucester area down to Virginia Beach over to Southampton, with about 1.7 million people. As you can imagine, that's a large geographic region, and it hosts a lot of different needs, a lot of different people, and different communities. The commission provides a space for our local elected leaders to come together and to convene and make decisions that relate to planning and transportation for our region. The staff for the PDC, myself included, and some of my colleagues who are joining us here this evening, we support the PDC and our elected leaders by providing technical support and assistance to both the elected leaders and officials, but also to their various technical professionals and stakeholders as well. So looking at the climate action plan, so this was derived from a grant from the EPA back in 2023. The HRPDC was awarded a planning grant to be able to develop a climate action plan for what's called the MSA, or Metropolitan Statistical Area for Hampton Roads. As you can see, that includes Gates County, Camden County, and Currituck, our neighbors in northern North Carolina, as well as Matthews County as well. The plan is to reduce greenhouse gases within our region. We'll go a little bit deeper in a moment into why it's important to reduce greenhouse gases, but that's one of the major aims of this plan and this program. This is the first MSA-wide or region-wide climate action plan that we'll be developing for Hampton Roads. This is a very exciting time to be thinking about new and innovative ways that we can build a more sustainable and eco-friendly Hampton Roads for now and for the future. So in this plan, we're identifying sources of greenhouse gases, and then we're working with our localities to reduce those greenhouse gases. So some of the goals that come out of that, again, are the reduction, creating cleaner air, which thankfully Hampton Roads actually ranks pretty high when it comes to clean air goals as far as for metropolitan area. But being mindful of, places where people live, work, play. We also understand that there are still overburdened areas that may be near air pollution and being mindful of them. Creating, looking at the green industry that has emerged in this sector and looking at workforce development opportunities or how we can connect our communities with these green jobs or it's jobs that may be created in this sector, while also lowering energy costs for our community members as well. And then working with our overburdened communities to address climate issues. We know that there are certain communities, as mentioned before, that may be closer to the pollutants in our region. And so, how do we best meet their needs as well, and make sure that they are not, left out of the conversation, that their input is included? Again, that's why we're here this evening. We want to hear from you. The goal of our plan, as well as creating a plan, but is to maximize the funds that are expensed to support small businesses, keep it here in our local community, our families, and with paying close attention to low income and disadvantaged communities. So, taking a look at our wonderful graphic here that sort of replicate some of the emissions that you might be familiar with here in Hampton Roads. So, taking a look at some of those greenhouse gases, the ones that you'll hear most commonly are methane and carbon dioxide or CO2. You might, like in the previous slide here, you can see like CO2 here, sometimes how you'll see that mentioned. And what happens is when we have these different sectors. So on the left there, you see some cornfields. You'll see beside that a landfill, a dump truck, an airplane there. You have a huge ship there, sort of like what we might see at our ports here in our maritime industry. Some industrial buildings, and of course, the famous single occupancy vehicle here in our society. And so, what happens is when those pollutants or gases are released from those different sources or sectors, it gets trapped in our atmosphere, and it creates sort of like what's called that greenhouse effect, and it prevents heat from being able to leave our atmospheres easily, which can create a warming effect. And what happens due to that is what's called climate destabilization. A lot of times we might hear like climate change, but what we're seeing happen and occur is the climate patterns and stability associated with that start to break down and deteriorate. And as a result of that, we're all impacted, right? Some of you may have heard or even asked yourself, why does why do climate related issues matter to me personally, right? They impact us all, not just today, but our generations to come. And so we have to be thinking about them and some ways that they impact us. And some, for us specifically here, we have to think about our changing weather patterns. Shifts in seasons. I know in Virginia we make that joke like, oh, you have your false fall, or you have you'll see different changes in seasonal patterns. A big one that a lot of people are familiar with here in Virginia: increased flooding, especially for our Tidewater region. And we know that part of that is being a coastal region and us. Also dealing with what's called relative sea level rise. So our land is sinking at the same time that the sea is rising. So we're going to experience some more recurrent flooding as well. As a result of that, you see different projects that are being invested in the region. The HRPDC worked on a study to um, put flood sensors throughout the region and have those linked to ways so that drivers can more easily tell when an area might be flooded. But we're going to need to invest in more of those resources as some of these impacts of climate destabilization become more present and more apparent. Extreme heat, that's something that most places on the globe are going to experience due to this. Um, More intense storms, drought, uh, power outages, food and agriculture disruptions. And obviously, when we think about the other impacts that were already named, that's going to impact our food and agriculture. And then also loss of habitat and wildlife. We have for those of you attending this evening who live in the Hampton Roads area, we have the wonderful privilege to live in such a beautiful place. And so it's really important that we look at how can we conserve the beauty of the Hampton Roads area. So where are greenhouse gases coming from and how can we reduce them? And when we're looking specifically at Hampton Roads, the Climate Action Plan is focusing on 6 different sectors. I'll go through the different sectors with you, but this also will relate to the survey that'll be released. If you have any questions about any of these, definitely feel free to bring them up again in the Q&A session or reach out to us at the end, and we'd be more than happy to explain any of these. So the first big one and major one is energy supply, right? Where are we getting our energy sourced from? And how can we make those sources greener and more efficient? To power our homes, our businesses, our transportation. You can see there that we have solar panels. That's a pretty popular way that people have been able to adapt cleaner energy practices. Right off the shore of Virginia Beach, we actually have wind turbines that are working to produce energy, and Dominion Energy is working to expand that. Looking at another sector, we have buildings and energy use. And so that's a place where most of us are spending a lot of our time. How can we run those places more efficiently? And then also, how can we be thinking about adaptation and mitigation strategies to make our buildings more resilient, but also produce less of those greenhouse gases? Some great examples that exist here in our region that if you haven't gotten a chance to check out, I would, strongly encourage. The Ryan Resilience Lab is one of the first buildings in the nation built to be reclaimed by nature. And that's part of the Elizabeth River Project. And then there's also the Greer Environmental Center that is part of Virginia Wesleyan University. And we have other examples throughout our region, but including the Brock Environmental Center. There are a couple different examples of what does that look like to adapt more efficient and energy friendly uh, efficiencies to our buildings. So looking at transportation and solid waste and wastewater. So with transportation, how can we help the switch to EVs or electric vehicles be easier, less burdensome, make it more accessible to people? How can we get behind our public transportation and help encourage people to utilize it more, invest more in our public transit, and offer more what are called or you may hear referred to as multimodal options, which are options that span beyond just like the single occupancy vehicle or the traditional vehicle on the road, but maybe using that public transit, maybe using light rail, maybe using bikes or e-bikes or what you hear is micro transit, micro mobility, looking at those scooters. that you might see around town. Looking at our solid waste and wastewater, how do we adapt better recycling and waste mitigation strategies and waste reduction strategies for our region to prevent as much waste from our water treatment facilities or from our landfills? When we throw things away, they go to that landfill, and not only do they impact the land and the surrounding environment, but also they can release gases, some of those greenhouse gases that can get trapped within our atmosphere and contribute toward that warming effect. So, how can we be looking at solid waste and wastewater for reduction? Coincidentally, our environmental education department at the PDC was recently also awarded a grant from the EPA for their Start Smart Recycle Right program, which really aims at helping to fight the myths related to recycling. And it maybe a lot of people maybe don't feel like it's effective or don't know if it's really doing what it's supposed to do. So our environmental education department is really working hard to assist with that and using grant funds from the EPA to move that forward in our region as well. Looking at our last two sectors, we have agriculture and natural lands. Again, you live in this area, or if you live in this area, you know just how beautiful it is. So it's also very helpful to have so much greenery because it can help to absorb or act as what can be considered a carbon sink, absorb some of those CO2 emissions or those greenhouse gases. So what can we do as a region to invest in those lands, conserve those lands, and even expand those lands in tree canopy? Um, if you are familiar with what's called the heat island effect, part of uh, what that describes is in our urban centers, when we have less tree canopy or green spaces, there's higher temperatures. So if you're living typically in a higher density city or an urban space, there may not be as much greenery, and so you'll have more asphalt and more heat being produced, which is also not healthy for us or for our planet. Industry. You look down our maritime water, our industries that are in our waterways. We have a lot going on in our region that's really great for our economy and for our workforce development. And it's so important to really the East Coast. I mean, the Port of Virginia provides so much to our not just Virginia and our region, but also to the entire East Coast, and then all the other industries. But how do we adapt more clean energy use and efficiency improvements? Something that's really cool about the Port of Virginia is they've actually been working on clean energy adaptation for some time, and even piloting different green operator programs. So many of our key stakeholders in that sector are already trying to make a positive impact and reverse potential impacts there. So, some examples of potential actions in Hampton Roads. Again, we can look at EV charging and making that more accessible, and having more stations around the region. We know that VDOT is working also on creating alternative fuel corridors within our region and our state. And so what does that look like for us, and how do we make that more accessible? LED street lights, they consume a lot less power compared to the traditional street light. Expanding our green spaces, especially looking at our bike and ped trails, that also opens up, again, more multimodal opportunities. And then looking at municipal upgrades, so our public libraries, our school buildings, providing um, efficiency upgrades in those areas to not just reduce costs and energy use, but also looking at them as models to the community so that residents are able to see what measures could be more easily adapted for them. Um, so looking at some of our next steps in this process, we are working to develop our regional goals and the measures or looking at what actions can be taken to achieve those goals. We're working with your locality leaders and stakeholders to get ideas for greenhouse gas reductions. And we're also going to be working more in the community to get additional feedback and understand what's feasible, what do people see as a priority for them, and how we can make this climate action plan one that represents the interests and perspectives of the different communities within our region and the different needs that exist. So that's where you all come in, and where we really need your help. So we have a survey that is available for you to take. It's a brief survey. It takes maybe 10 minutes to complete. If you have issues accessing it, you can definitely reach out to me. I'll put my information in the chat as well so that you all have access to that. And it's also here on this slide. But take the time, please, to share this survey with your community members and to complete it yourself and share what are your concerns or your priorities as it relates to a climate action plan for Hampton Roads. Um, I'm going to not talk as much at this point and open the floor up for some questions because I know it's not fun to ever hear someone just go on and on. But before I do, I want to say, on February 5th, if you're not already aware, the Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, our state environmental agency, will be hosting a community listening session in Virginia Beach. It'll be from 6 to 8. Please participate if you're able to. I'll also put that information in the chat as well. They have, in addition to planning grant funds, they were awarded implementation funds. And what that means is our grant allows us to create a climate action plan, but we don't necessarily have the implementation funds to make all of those ideas come to fruition yet. But our partners are at DEQ in the state. They have implementation dollars. So it's really important that if you want to be invested and involved in how those dollars are spent, please join their listening session next or 2 Wednesdays from now, February 5th. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and open it up to the Q&A. Do we have any questions out there? And as I mentioned, I'll go ahead and put my my email in the chat for you. Okay, it looks like we have some questions in here.
Hey, Quan, I can answer one.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Whitney.
So Vic Nichols had to just ask, how much does all this cost? I don't know. I will tell you that we very quickly, last year when we had a chance to apply for implementation grants, came up with a $100 million proposal that included converting streetlights to LEDs, to expanding our trails network, and to doing a lot more EV charging infrastructure. So to do everything costs quite a lot, but on the other hand, there are some small steps we can take. Just trying to make things like making buildings more energy efficient. Some of those have a good return on investment. We're trying to get a better handle on what strategies are the most cost effective, as well as the ones that are most important to you. And then Also, just take advantage of so many programs that are out there that we might be able to use some grants, either public sector or philanthropic organizations to move this forward. So, one of the biggest goals of this plan is just having a better idea of what's important, and then we'll start thinking about can we afford to do it. But as Quan said, this is the first time we've attempted this kind of plan, and we're certainly learning a lot. Thanks.
And my apologies. This is Whitney Catchmark. She is actually the project lead, and she's helped us bring this to fruition. So thank you, Whitney. Let's see if we have any. We have a question from Diane. And I'll go ahead and answer this question live. Diane writes that recycling education is necessary, and she's been told that that Norfolk sends all its recycling to the same location as its landfill. So there's no difference in recycling as garbage. And she said people need re-education if this is not so. And yes, that's absolutely one of those myths that our environmental education department wants to try to dispel and help people get more insights on related to like what's happening to your recycling in your area and the benefits of it. And again, even beyond recycling, waste mitigation strategies, right? So like if we're going to go to a store, maybe how can we be more thoughtful about what we're purchasing so that it doesn't just end up in our landfill? What can we have that's reusable, or what can we fix? We participate largely in a throwaway society. And so how do we maybe make some transition to like fix or reuse? Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay, so Whitney, I might need your help with this one. Rebecca writes, since organic waste produces methane, is there any plan to establish a regional green waste facility for municipalities to dump their leaves and other organic waste instead of landfilling them?
All right. So I don't know about having one regional facility, but certainly we've been talking to both the South Side and Peninsula about interest in creating a program for organic waste. We know that would be a huge benefit. There's so much of the overall sort of waste or garbage that's going to the landfills that is compostable. And this is where Hampton Roads is sort of falling a little short of the potential to reduce our need for landfill space and also reduce greenhouse gases. So appreciate you bringing that up. It's certainly, that's one that is on our mind, and we'll try to come up with a plan that works. So thanks.
Thanks, Whitney. Edward writes, let's see here. Edward, this is a great question. Edward writes, I'll go ahead and answer this one. Several nations and companies are developing hydrogen-powered vehicles. Is anyone looking at the role of hydrogen fuels in the future and working an infrastructure plan for fueling stations? Great question. That's definitely one of the items that came up as part of the climate action plan is adoption of alternative fuels, including hydrogen. So that is something that is being looked at in this plan. And when you, and I hope you do, Edward, do the survey, please include that as, maybe one of the priorities. It'll allow you to rank different investments or focus areas. So definitely include that if possible. Thanks, Edward. Sorry, Whitney, were you going to add to that?
Oh, I could add to that. Sorry, I started trying to juggle things, but that was hydrogen, right? That was the question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you mention the Virginia Tech facility on the peninsula?
I didn't, no.
So there is already a research program in Newport News, and we're trying to support them. They would like to do kind of a pilot project to try to get some fleets, both either private sector, a couple companies that seemed interested in converting to hydrogen-powered trucks, or some public sector. So that's something we can build off of, and we've definitely had them in the mix. So thanks.
Thanks, Whitney. Okay, it looks like Casey's typing an answer for Lynn. Mary Lou Burke. Oh, hey, Mary Lou, you're part of our community engagement for the HRPDC and HRTPO. So I see, right, connecting Chesapeake can have a role if funding. please definitely reach out to me about. I'm not as familiar with if Connecting Chesapeake is a group. I'm not as familiar with them, but please definitely reach out to me and we can get more insight to you about that. Um, let's see. Charlie writes, "Oh, hey, Charlie, great work. Thanks. Are we aiming to fund this climate action plan completely using federal funding, or are we expecting the region or localities to have to pay for portions of implementation?" Um, so I will tag team that one with Whitney. Um, but the plan is being funded by federal funds. And like I mentioned, there are certain recipients that have also been awarded, in addition to planning grants, they've been awarded implementation funds. So those projects that may show up in our region or Tidewater region by way of DEQ, who was awarded implementation funds, those would be sourced from federally, assuming that the implementation didn't require beyond what they were, federally funded. As far as for us, we were awarded planning grant, and so we're actually looking at different implementation funding opportunities to maybe mitigate some of those costs. But I'll let Whitney take it from there.
So yeah, it's an unusual circumstance where the EPA ordered these. They gave us these big planning grants, but the only dedicated implementation funds were awarded like in the second year of our planning grant, and so we didn't get that. However, there are a lot of programs that align with implementation, and we're going to try to get grants to do these things when we get a little further along the line in terms of planning. But yeah, it's going to be a mixed bag. There's some things that we can do in conjunction with the state. Some it's just locality initiatives, and there are several localities that are really moving forward with these things now. So this is a chance to learn from each other and expand those local programs. And yeah, some of them cost money up front, but there are a lot of ones that sort of pay off too. So we'll just do a mixture and try to figure it out.
Thanks, Whitney. Victoria writes, "Are there hopes that implementation dollars will materialize for the plan to be carried out, or is the idea that DEQ will implement the plan?" So kind of in alignment with what Whitney just said and I mentioned, we're looking for implementation dollars as well to complement the plan, but also we DEQ are like our state partners, and so any plans that they would be doing in a Tidewater region, there's a great opportunity again for that community engagement to connect with them on the 5th and get more insight into like sort of what their hopes are related to implementation. I don't want to necessarily speak on DEQ's behalf. I am excited for them to have those implementation funds.
You take one of them, I guess, just got answered. Never mind. Oh no, I was going to answer Rogard's question.
Oh, okay.
Go on. So he asked that we mentioned bike and ped as a possible solution, and are we looking at how land use decisions affect the feasibility of making use of these, as in more compact urban areas enable walking and biking versus small, less sprawl makes distances to walk take too long. So yes, actually, we had a fairly significant conversation with some of our transportation planners. They've been looking at this. We're going to hope to build on some of the work they've done, some GIS analysis at what sort of a more walkable scale development is. I think we have to recognize that we can put in the plan that this is a strategy and it has benefits. Those kinds of changes are really done at the local level, and it's part of comprehensive planning and that sort of thing. But this is perhaps another benefit to changing your development pattern, and it's a chance for people in the community to highlight that as a priority if it's what you'd like to see happen. And we will roll it into our greenhouse gas reduction strategies.
And some of your questions will be answered maybe by chat via some of our colleagues that are in the wings. So don't worry if it looks like we're not getting to your question yet. Some of our colleagues may be answering it by text as well. Um, Sorry, just going back up here. Um, yeah, so Blanche asks, what programs are available to help the average homeowner obtain energy sources for our homes? Cost is high even for solar for the home. Blanche, that's a great question. So one of the things that we've looked into as part of this plan is what are those different solar programs that are available, and how can we get residents connected with them, and how do we make that more accessible and what barriers currently exist there. If you have any like specific barriers in addition to costs that you run into, I know different people have mentioned like maybe a lease on the materials needed for solar energy. If that's something that's of a concern to you, please share that with us, so that we can include that as part of our planning. Gary, hey Gary. Gary asks, has Hampton Roads conducted a drawdown analysis to determine which measures has the greatest potential for carbon reduction? It's a great question, Gary. If I can, Susan, do you mind if I call on you?
Sure. So I think when you're speaking about the drawdown, there's the project drawdown, which puts a number of different measures and evaluation pieces out there. What we're doing with the process for this is starting with determining where the emissions are coming from. So putting together a region-wide greenhouse gas inventory, then creating a business as usual projection. And then based on what the measures and actions are that are identified for the plan, looking at projections of what the reductions would be from those items. So since in your comment drawdown was capitalized, I'm not sure if you're talking about specifically all of the types of actions and measures that are captured and spoken about under project drawdown. And so we're not doing that full project drawdown host of measures for the evaluation on it, but we will be doing the emission reductions along with criteria air pollutants for the measures and actions that are identified within this plan specifically.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, and Charlie writes, do we believe that our shipyards and ports are contributing to emissions at an outsized level? We mentioned collaborating with the port. Um, do we think that there needs to be regional policies to hold shipyards accountable to climate action? Um, I'll let Whitney add to this, but what I'll say is that what we've seen with the Port of Virginia is that they've really been focusing on their green operator programs and different efficiency upgrades and adaptations. And then also as part of this plan, we're looking at where are those different like emission spaces within our region, using data from the state, using local data or regional data as well, to figure out where those sources are coming from.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I know Scott Whitehurst is on. I don't think that he can weigh in. He's from the port, but we'll maybe get some information from him as far as to put in the Q&A. But really feel like the port has been pretty proactive on this. They've been a great example of looking for ways to do greenhouse gas reduction. So I think we're trying to expand the efforts that have been going on, and not really so much looking to hold shipyards accountable while everything's going so well. So let's see. I guess we do have a note here, so I guess we'll see if Scott wants to weigh in. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, so we have a question from Tracy Cooper, and it says, for full disclosure, I am with 13 News Now. I am wondering why this is just now the first climate action plan for such a vulnerable area. Why not decades ago? And we also have our communications person here as well, Matt. But Whitney, I was wondering if maybe you wanted to take a stab at that.
Well, I think this has just ended up being a great opportunity for us to sort of springboard off of the national effort and the EPA grant. We have had a program that was looking at the effects of sea level rise and the impacts of flooding on our region. We've been looking at precipitation changes for a good decade now. But that seemed to be the most practical place for us to start on these issues was, how to make Hampton roads more resilient and deal with these changes as people sort of sorted out in their own mind how high a priority it was to actually work on greenhouse gas reductions. I think it's part of it is it's always difficult to go into these new areas. This is definitely new for us. It's a lot of different sectors in play. I normally work on water, and now I'm working on solid waste management and transportation, trails, and all these things. And so this is not an easy lift for the PDC or for any entity in Hampton Roads. So it was helpful to get this grant and have everybody be excited about doing this. And so this was the best timing to do it. And hopefully we'll get some momentum and do some good things with it.
Absolutely. So I'll go ahead and mark that one as done. Let's see here. Lynn writes, who are the community leaders and organizations that we're working with to develop a plan? So our steering committee is comprised of the what we would term as like technical stakeholders from the different localities. So maybe we have some resilience or sustainability officers from different localities that are participating. We have utilities professionals from the different localities, transportation officials or representatives. Some of our stakeholders that have been mentioned, like regional neighbors as well, such as like the port, the military, the Dominion Energy. Are there any other groups, Whitney, that you wanted to mention for the steering committee? Anybody I left out?
No, I think we're continuing to expand, but I think you got it. Thanks.
Good. And again, I'll take this moment to plug. We, again, are looking to get more out into the community. So if there are opportunities that you know of for us to come and share information about the Climate Action Plan or groups that you know are interested and engaging, please share that information with us. Are there... See here. Linda writes, is there any plan to enact a law that requires reusable bags and ending single-use plastics in stores? I would take a stab at that. I believe that has to be decided at our state level. But Whitney, did you have any additional insight for single-use plastic or bags? Or Susan, did you?
I was trying to read another question while you answered that. So what was the question? My bad.
Is there any plan to enact a law that requires reusable bags and ending single-use plastics in stores?
I know that's come up before in the General Assembly, and our Ask HR Green folks have been tracking that. I don't think that's off the table, but that hasn't really been a focus of the this particular planning effort. I think it sort of fits into a couple of different strategies with waste management. But yeah, that one hasn't really risen to the top yet. But we can look into more of the potential there for greenhouse gas reductions.
Carolyn writes, "Hey Quan and Whitney. Hey Carolyn, how can we stop the cutting of trees from developers in our community when we don't have stormwater here yet? Lights, more lighting is needed here, especially street lights. The Dominion Energy only put up bulbs here. when the city approves it, how can we get funding for more lighting? That's a great question. If you're talking about like LED streetlights or maybe streetlight conversions, that's definitely included as part of the plan. It sounds like you may be referring to maybe just like generally more lighting. Um, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's is that part of the comprehensive improvement plan? I don't want to misspeak or like misinform.
Yeah, I think we might have to come back to the how you advocate for increased lighting, um, but we can address some of those things in our follow up summary of Q&A. And I think the other question about trees, like one of the potential strategies is to have a tree canopy goal and to keep monitoring tree tree canopy and cover that. That is something we've been looking at in the past. It has a lot of benefits, not only for greenhouse gas reductions, but for um, impacts on water quality, slowing down the amount of water that gets into pipes and ditches, and also how clean that water is. So um, we'll definitely have some strategies on that vein.
Um, Gary Harris asks, how can we encourage our cities to be more proactive in developing their own decarbonization plans? I think that's part of this process is bringing everyone to the table to convene and learn about these different sectors, the potential actions. The plan hopefully will provide a roadmap to our region and to our localities on what can be done. And then I know that not necessarily decarbonization specific, but I know that some of our localities have looked at resiliency plans and adaptation mitigation plans as well. Oh, okay. Lisa asked, it seems that there are disincentives for purchasing fuel efficient cars in this state. What efforts are being made to make it more affordable to purchase hybrid or electric vehicles? Um, and that's one of the areas that is being explored, like what disincentives do exist. I know that there is a like a alternative fuel tax. I believe is maybe the name. I don't want to misquote it, but that can be associated sometimes with hybrid or EVs, and maybe that's what you're referring to. Um, but as far as what efforts are being made to make it more affordable to purchase hybrid or electric cars, that's sort of what we're looking at as part of the plan as well. Is like how do we make adoption of EVs easier? How do we create like more EV charging networks? How do we increase the accessibility of that and encourage people to adopt those? So Gary asks, how can community-based organizations lead on climate project implementation versus traditional academic institutions and large nonprofits? This is such a great question, Gary. Thank you. A great way that community-based organizations can lead, especially related to this, is to not just engage in a survey, but there will be opportunities as part of this project to have some interviews and have more in-depth conversation, and that would be an excellent opportunity to invest, you know, into the plan and be a part of it. We want to make sure that it's a plan that represents the interests of our different communities. So Gary, definitely connect with me. We have each other's information, and so we can discuss those opportunities. Okay, Victoria asks, is there any intention to align the plan with the roadmap put out by Project Drawdown? Project Drawdown highlights how so many climate change solutions don't necessarily match up with where most sources of greenhouse gases come from. So I strongly recommend using them as a resource if they're not already on your radar. Help us get the most bang for our buck, so to speak. Susan, do you know if Project Drawdown if we're using any data from them?
So we don't have a specific methodology where we're pulling from Project Drawdown. It is something that I believe at least a handful, I know at least some of the steering committee members are familiar with it. I'm not sure exactly how many of them are, but it's, I guess I kind of refer to it as like it has a good catalog of different types of measures and data. Usually it's at a broader scale than down at the MSA region. But I think it is something that we could we can review and talk about it with the committee members.
Susan. Oh, and then for those who are curious, Scott Whitehurst included the sustainability report related to the Port of Virginia, and that is in the Q&A as well, and available for everyone. And I'll see if I can actually just copy that into the chat for everyone to see. Additionally, in the chat are resources related to recycling. We are about to wrap up here. We have about 5 minutes left. Since I won't be able to get to everyone's question, I do want you to know that we are going to be including not just the recording of this webinar on our YouTube and website, but we'll also be including the Q&As to be referenced back. I'm just trying to see if there's maybe one more question we can take that hasn't been asked. Oh, okay. So Charlie asked the question, could the 190K funding proposed in HB 126 or 2126 for regional energy planning by PDCs be applied to implementing the Climate Action Plan's energy supply initiatives if it passes in some form? We did see that bill was a newer bill that was being presented. I'm not quite sure the intricacies of how that funding is spent. I do know that the gist of it is to have PDCs within the state create energy plans for their regions. Energy plans take a lot of resources, and so I think that they would just need to provide, I think, additional. There just need to be some more additional logistics shaped out from that bill so that it could be more beneficial to like a PDC like ours. Or is there something additional you'd want to add, Whitney?
I will say, if you look at that bill, it really recognizes that we as a state haven't kind of have this. We don't have this figured out. We might want renewable energy, but there's a lot of communities at a really smaller scale that are like, but I don't really like the way it's been implemented. And, down the road for me, some of the solar farms are not so welcome anymore. And this would be a chance to try to hash out that conversation. And it would be good planning. We'll see what they come up with. But I think it's worth watching that legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we can come up with a compromise that helps us figure out where to put these facilities that makes everyone happy.
Okay. Oh, and Tyler shared that the city of Norfolk has a climate action plan. So that's definitely within our MSA. And so she recommended for everyone to look at that. Well, it looks like we're winding down. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to get to everyone's question this evening. But like I said, we will be including the Q&A on our website. We'll also include a recording of this on our YouTube. And then our contact information is here on the slide. My name again is Quan McLaurin. I'm here with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, as is my colleague and project lead, Whitney Ketchmark. And so if you have any questions about this, the climate plan, please reach out to us. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, please scan our QR code or visit our website to check out our survey, share it with your community members, share it with your colleagues, so that we can have input and perspectives that come from our region. And then I did see one last question can we make the chat available to copy or send a copy of the chat? I will try to get a copy of the links and stuff that we included in the chat. And our support, just said, yes, we can. So we'll have that available. All right. Thank you all so much. And I hope that you all have a wonderful evening. And please be looking out for our future webinar in June, where we'll be able to provide you an update with where we are, and look for any opportunities that we could connect with you in your community. Thank you.